maybe besides the judges themselves, what if the judges aren't the problem, but it's the scoring system we use that is the problem? This very seemingly antiquated 10-9 system. Uh, judging? So, for those that don't know, each round is judged individually, both in boxing and MMA. If we're using those as examples, the winner of the round gets 10 points. The loser gets 9 or less, depending on how lopsided the round is.
In MMA, it's a lot less likely for it to be anything less than a 9, yes, but it does happen. And I think that's another thing as well. Like, I'll let you continue.
Okay. But maybe we don't judge it round per round, but instead we more just judge the fight as a whole. Because, of course, if we're talking about a 3-round fight, you can have a fighter win 10-9, 10-9, and then if they don't get knocked down in the third round, they win that fight. But, or at least most times out of not. Of course, they could lose that round 10-8 and be a draw, but 9 times out of 10, that's how it happens. But what if instead we have a fighter that could have a really good first 2 rounds, but then we have the fighter absolutely dominating the third round? Or if we're going, maybe a bigger example, you have a 5-round fight in the main event or a championship. You have one fighter win those first 4 rounds, and that's like a 3-point difference between them. You're probably not going to get a 10-7 round. But what if they have a really, really good... They've been competitive in the first rounds, then they have a really good last round. What if they won the fight more off of that? I feel like I'm not explaining it as well as I can.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Like, if they just came on really strong at the very end and they almost finished them, let's say, in the last round. Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I like the fact that it's broken up round by round. It's incremented, and I think for a reason, for it to be easier.
Okay.
To kind of break it down.
Instead of having to judge it as a whole, judging it.
Because judging it by a whole, that's tough, man. You're gonna have to think about, like, well, what happened here? Well, it's a round by round basis. You can think, okay, specifically, I remember in this first 5-minute increment, this happened, and they were dominating this aspect, and this blah 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 blah. I think that's probably not exactly where the where the problem lies. I have a couple points to add to this one. If you guys have anything else you want to say about this point before I go a little bit off.
Well, maybe just instead of judging as a whole, we keep it broken up. But if we at least, like, I think it was Joe Anik that talked about this. What if we show the score to the fighters and to the crowd? So after each round, you go up to the scoreboard, 10-9 Reyes or 10-9 Jones, and instead of leaving them to a guessing game.
I think everyone can agree that is wanted.
I feel like it's right? I feel like it's wanted, but I feel like part of the excitement of fighting for those close fights is not knowing. Like, kind of, because then,
I don't know if that's fair to the fighter, though.
Yeah, but it's like, if you look at it, it's a lot of the people. That's why they have the commercial break and everything for right after that the fight ends. It's because you're like, oh, who won? Like, that was close.
Like really good reality TV.
Yeah, that is a good point, though. I like that. I didn't think about it like that.
It's the entertainment aspect. That is a very good point.
It's that mystery, but that just leaves room for not enough transparency. I feel like
that's where it comes into the fact that we need to be more transparent of how to score. Is because if we get the scoring down, then knowing the score doesn't matter.
Right, and that leads me into my exact next point, is I think that there needs to be a more clear scoring standard. I think there's too much variation in the opinions of judges and what they value the highest when scoring a fight. Just like we were talking earlier. Some people think, some people have a higher emphasis on the ground game, when people are controlling via wrestling or threatening with submissions and jiu-jitsu, and some people think that causing damage on the feet, with their striking, is what's going to, determine if, the winner of a fight more. And so I think if there was just a more standardized, clear, way of judging that people, all could agree upon, it would just make it so much more easy. Because fighting, I think, is really the only sport where it really is at some level left up to the eye test. There's no, like we said, there's no scoreboard. There's no live scoreboard that you can look at and say, okay, well, this guy's up, 29-28.
Well, see, every other sport, to your point, every other sport, so much easier to score because it's like, in football, they score a touchdown, that's 6 points. that is a clear scoring rule. Of course, let's not get into the touchy subjects on whether it's a catch, whether it's a touch, and all that. That's a different story. But if
Right.
the ball crosses the plane, that's 6 points, and no one can dispute that. But in fighting, sometimes if a guy lands more punches, but the other guy lands bigger punches in the less amount, it really depends on who the person is to determine who actually won that fight.
Right.
You
Which
know,
which leads me to a question that I have for you guys. Do we think that the 10-9 system, that's currently in use for both boxing and MMA, do we think that that's really the best system of judging that's currently available? Is there something else out there that we could adapt and it make more sense? Just like you were saying, in football, in basketball, when a point is scored, when a touchdown is scored, when someone makes a basket, like they're going to add 2-3 points, whatever. In MMA, you have no idea what that knockdown was worth. You don't have no idea what that takedown was worth, what that submission attempt was worth. You have no idea, right? I think it would be very interesting
should
if
we
there
give,
was
like, a
something
point
else to keep
system?
track.
I don't think so.
should we give like a point system to what happens in like a takedown? That's 2 points.
No.
A
I feel like that
knockdown,
makes
that's
it
3
way too.
points.
I feel like that takes away what fighting is. I feel like having a point system is I feel like having the point system is cool, but it's like you can't have like, oh, a knockdown, that's 2 points right there, and a takedown, that's 3 points, because then it starts getting to the whole thing of when we look at those takedowns of where they take him down, but then he gets right back up, but it was a takedown. So what is that? Half a point? Is that so? It's like I feel like adding a score to it. There's too many differing possibilities in MMA to have it like a takedown is this and solid punch is this and stuff like that, because that starts getting way too, because there's fighters like if you even want to look at boxing for specifics, there are certain punchers who are more volume punchers, and if there's a scoring system, they're mostly going to win just because they're a volume puncher.
So in your opinion, you think that the 10-9 system is the best system available
As of right now that anybody has or anything, I think it is the best system. I think we just need a less broad, because I feel like the system right now is way too broad.